Hey there, everybody. Welcome to part two of our questions and answers show this week. Sorry, we got cut off by a phone call I had to take. So, when the wife calls, you got to take it, right? So, anyway, let's pick up where we left off. I'm going to go to Brent Uptain's question once again. So, Pete, do you have a favorite reissue label, and do you follow the output of any reissue label specifically? I personally find that certain reissue labels have helped guide my journey through obscure rock of the 60s and 70s, especially esoteric recordings who put out masterful versions of albums I love. They do such a great job that I've now come to trust their taste in any music they put out, thus leading me to more obscure bands. Okay, so there's a bunch of them. I don't follow any specifically, I wait to see what they're going to put out next. There's just so much stuff coming out, but I always like to kind of keep an eye and say, see what they're doing. Esoteric / Cherry Red, obviously. Great label. They've done a wealth of great stuff for rock and prog rock and all sorts of other genres and wonderful. In fact, do I have any right here? I'm sure I have some in a stack next to me. But anyway, yeah, and great booklets, very informative, a lot of history of the albums and stuff like that. Great. Angel Air also does a fantastic job. I get a lot of their stuff. Rock Candy, if you're more into hard rock and metal and stuff like that, Rock Candy has done a great job, specifically re-releasing and reissuing stuff from the 80s. BGO Records, man, I love BGO. Okay, the beat goes on, right? They have done some fantastic reissues where they put two albums in one CD collection, which is great. So if you're looking to get remastered or reissued stuff from the 70s and the 80s or maybe even from the 60s, you're looking to kind of dive into a band for the first time, you can, instead of going buying single CDs for every single album, BGO would put 2 on 1. You can get spend half the money getting the whole collection a lot quicker, which has been nice. Repertoire done great job on reissuing a lot of Prog stuff. Okay, Edsel is another one kind of like BGO. They've released a lot of good just rock stuff from the glory years. Rhino, obviously. One Way, Wounded Bird, I believe they kind of one became the other. Wounded Bird, and I'm not sure they're still in existence, but Wounded Bird put out a lot of great stuff. In fact, they did a lot of reissues on a lot of fantastic fusion albums from the 60s and 70s. Musea, another band that kind of reissued a lot of very underground and unknown progressive rock stuff from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Garden of Delights, another label that kind of did the same thing. They don't do it as much anymore, but the Laser's Edge used to do that quite a bit. Symphonic as well, and then Cuneiform, okay? All those three did a wonderful job of kind of reissuing early on, especially some really underground and unknown prog and fusion type stuff. And then you got Rockadrome, okay, who also reissues a lot of kind of underground hard rock rarities and things. A lot of good reissue labels out there, and thank God for them, right? From Stephen Race, hey Pete, I like the newer format of selecting only 10 or so interesting questions. It makes for a better Q&A show. I agree. Just curious, here's some classic bands that you haven't really mentioned yet on any of your shows. Please discuss one at a time, but what's your take on John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers? Okay, I like the early John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers stuff. He has a million albums, but those early, the first, the ones with you got Clapton and Mick Taylor and obviously Peter Green. That's the stuff that I like. The really early ones. That's some great kind of early British blues with some sizzling guitar work. I have a bunch of those early ones. Van Morrison, I always like Van Morrison, but I have and that classic, was it mid-70s live album, and it's the expanded version of it, so it's 3 discs or whatever, that's got, all of his famous tunes on it, played very well live, and that's probably all I need from Van Morrison. It's got all the really good stuff. Procol Harum, I've talked about Procol Harum before. I have every Procol Harum album. I always really liked them a lot. A band that... they were kind of prog, kind of not, kind of symphonic rock, kind of not, kind of classic rock, mainstreamy sort of thing. I may do a Procol Harum, best to worst albums or something like that one of these days. I do like them quite a bit. Quicksilver Messenger Service, I think I have a live album of theirs. That's it. I just never really got into them. I like that live album. It's pretty good. Some good guitar work on there, but I never really dove into them, big time. Iron Butterfly, I do like. I have all the Iron Butterfly albums. They were a pretty cool band. What's interesting is that band really was not all about In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, right? I mean, that was like their big tune, and it's like their kind of heavy psychedelic spooky tune, but the majority of their repertoire is not a lot like that. But really cool band, good rock band with really cool organ, and a lot of different lineup changes and stuff. So like almost every album sounds completely different than the next, but a lot of good variety on those albums. Joe Cocker I've never really gotten into. I have like Joe Cocker and the Grease Band live from Woodstock on CD. That's really good. That was a great performance. But other than that, I really never. And I have, I think, a greatest hits of Joe Cocker that I've had for like a million years. And it's good vocalist. I just never really gravitated much into his music. Other than I always liked the Woodstock set because it was just so energetic. The Faces I love. I love the Faces. I have all the Faces albums on CD, and they're a great rock and roll band. I think the Faces probably could have been as big as the Stones. They just didn't last that long, and some great tunes on there. And that's like Rod Stewart at his best, right? I mean, a really good kind of raunchy rock and roll band. Faces, very good. From Scala Grimmer Kvoltvelson. Hey, Pete, thank you for answering my question on the show. This time I'd like to ask you something on the drum technique called blast beat. While Wikipedia says it was developed by metal bands in the 80s, I think the first, though of course very mild example may be the song And the Eagle Chased the Dove to Its Ruin from the prog rock band Marsupilami. Marsupilami. I have that album. I can never say that name correctly. Marsupilami, released in 1970. It starts around 1:15. Maybe a weird question, but would love to hear your opinion on that. Okay, first of all, that's a great band and a great album and a great song. Okay, I own that as well. That's quite good. But, I went and listened to that twice after I got your question just to kind of see what you're hearing. That's, to my ears, that's not a blast beat. The blast beats are, and that's not really what that is. It's not. I think the first blast beat, Tony Williams, jazz drummer, was doing some of that kind of stuff like back in the 60s and the early 70s, and there were other jazz drummers who were, maybe not as militaristic as that, but that's basically what they were doing way back. But I think the one, and you can actually go listen to it, because it's pretty cool, and I had not even thought of this, but there was a band that released an album in 1969 called Attila, featuring on Hammond organ a guy named Billy Joel and a drummer named John Small. No guitars, just those two guys, and it's like a raucous, heavy rock album with like acrobatic Hammond organ work and blasting drums. And definitely check it out. Attila, self-titled from 1969. And if you like kind of like that really raucous Deep Purple sound, but without, guitar, that's kind of what you get. Maybe like the Vanilla Fudge a little bit, that sort of thing. It's pretty rocking album. When you think of what Billy Joel kind of went to next, right? Pretty crazy. But anyway, there's a song called Brain Invasion on there where for like maybe a 10-second passage, the drummer, John Small, is totally doing those blast beats. And it's just like, it just comes out of nowhere. So that's maybe like the first time it was introduced in a rock format. But of course, once the 80s came around, you had bands like Napalm Death and DRI and Sepultura, Morbid Angel, and then, on the black metal side, Mayhem and Marduk, Emperor, Immortal, all those bands, as well as, Cannibal Corpse, death metal in the 90s. That's, a lot of death metal, black metal bands, that's what they use right now. Blast beats are very, very prominent in the music of those bands. But it's just some people hate blast beats. And I agree, they can get monotonous if that's all you get. Like I look at the music of Marduk, a black metal act, who I like, but I get fatigued with their music sometimes because it's non-stop blasting. You can only listen to, so much, over and over and over again. And it's just, after a while, it's just like, oh my God, it's like pummeling. But good question. From Drum Music Inc. I know you have a ZZ Top show coming soon. I love all their 70s albums, but when Eliminator came out, I was like, what the fuck is this? I checked out, hated that record. I'm 52 in your age bracket. I wonder if you love those early ZZ Top records and had the same reaction to Eliminator, even though it's by far their biggest selling record. Your thoughts? Well, I was kind of like a late bloomer to the music of ZZ Top, so I really didn't start getting into ZZ Top till the DeGea album. So, it was like Cheap Sunglasses and all that kind of stuff. That's what, but I had heard all the other tunes, but was like, partially into them. But it wasn't until that album that I really got into them. And then all of a sudden, Eliminator came out And it's just like, but I was into Eliminator when it first came out. I thought it was okay. So I guess if I was heavily into those first couple albums, I would have been like you and like, what the hell is this, But Eliminator has some really good songs on it. I would have changed things up a little bit because I think, that whole gimmick they had was just kind of ridiculous. And I think it took away from how serious a band they actually were, adding the synths and all the kind of pre-programmed stuff. And just like looking back on it now, those couple of albums that they released around that time in the 80s into the early 90s, some good tunes, yes, but man, it's like I wish they would have toned that shit down quite a bit because those first like 3, 4, 5... ZZ Top albums are absolutely spectacular. And they've gotten back into that kind of early sound in recent years. So if you haven't listened to any of the last couple of ZZ Top albums, I highly recommend them. They're very good, very back to basics, just like raunchy, swampy, bluesy rock and roll. So good question. From Arnaud B. Hi, Pete. Among the numerous videos that you have recorded, which ones surprised you the most by the high number of views, and which ones surprised you the most by the small number of views? Well, that kind of happens on both this show and my Comic Book Geezers show. It's like, you put out some videos where you think, man, people are going to love this, and then, nobody watches it, right? And then you put out other stuff that you don't think is going to take off, and it totally does gangbuster business, like a case in point. So I did that top 10 songs in Nazareth last week, right? And I figured, Nazareth's not a huge band. I was like, this will probably do okay, but it probably won't do as well as some of the other ones I put out, right? And it's done great. Okay, within like 24 hours, I had like 2,000 views. Okay, I was surprised. I didn't think Nazareth were that popular. I thought for sure my Robin Trower and Frank Marino videos, because we have a lot of guitar players that follow this channel, would have done really good. And they've done okay, but not nearly as good as the Nazareth one has done. And then surprisingly, like I do stuff on like, Zeppelin, and they do pretty well, but not great. The Deep Purple and the Sabbath stuff do pretty well. But you know what bands do? I mean, like, I can't do enough Blue Oyster Cult and Thin Lizzy videos. It's unbelievable. Anything I do that's Blue Oyster Cult or Thin Lizzy related does dynamite. Gets tons of views, which I'm exasperated by. And you get a lot of people. I get a lot of comments about UFO and the bands like in Rush and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I've done a couple of UFO related shows. Yeah, they do okay. Nothing spectacular. I get so many people, and this is what kills me. I get a lot of people who comment all the time, want to see more Prog, want to see more Prog, want to see more Prog. And sometimes I do like Prog-related shows, like I do like that Gentle Giant History of show, which I thought would have done great. It's done fairly well, not as good as I thought. And then the Gentle Giant Top 10 Song show did okay, not great. The Genesis and Yes ones do pretty good. But I've done some other like Prog-related artists where I've done top 10 songs and stuff like that, and they've done okay, but not fantastic. It's just amazing what really does well. These questions and answer shows do great, okay? And I get a lot of people who want to hear more about some new music that's coming out by new bands, and I do the What's Hot shows, and they do the least amount of business out of any videos I put on here, which for me is frustrating because that's why I started this channel. Okay, I started this channel to kind of take what I do on the website to review and talk about new music by new bands and older bands, okay, so people can, get knowledge of what's coming out, what's been released, and what to kind of look for. But the What's Hot shows get very few views, comparatively speaking, to everything else I do. So it's pretty evident to me that the majority of the people who watch my channel really are only interested in like older music. It's just the way it is. But I'm still going to talk about the new stuff because that's the point of this whole channel and the point of the website. So that's going to continue. So from Bradley Y, what is your opinion on older bands that keep the same name but have only one or two original members from the original lineup? Not sure if a band like Judas Priest counts since Rob Halford and Glenn Tipton are probably more recognized than the original members they replaced. Also not sure how much Whitesnake counts since it seems to revolve around David Coverdale. Was thinking more of Uriah Heep where Mick Box is the only original member. Is it still Uriah Heep? What would you think if Paul McCartney was able and willing to name a band, the Beatles, but he was the only original member? And then from Matty Boy Walker, what's your opinion on Wishbone Ash, the current Andy Powell lineup, and Nazareth carrying on with just one original member? Skinner and Status Quo and Deep Purple in there. I'll throw Skinner, Deep Blah. I'll throw Skinner and Status Quo and Deep Purple in there also. Can they still get away with calling themselves the name? Do you think it has lost them any fans? Okay, so I get this question a lot, and I've had this discussion a lot with a lot of people. There's a lot of folks out there, myself included, who, even if a classic lineup is diminished going forward, I still want the opportunity, if the band is willing, for them to continue on playing those songs live and occasionally maybe recording music that still sounds like what the band has sounded like in their classic years. Okay, so Judas Priest, I'm going to see them next week again, 3 times in the last year, and Uriah Heep, both together. So, Priest has Halford. Tipton, you can't really count Tipton anymore because he only shows up for encores. He's got Parkinson's, so he doesn't play with the band full-time anymore. You got Ian Hill on bass. He's an original member. Halford is not an original member, but he's a classic member. And, they're still out doing it. They still sound exactly like Priest. Does it suck that KK is not there anymore? Yeah, but that was his choice. Richie Faulkner does a fantastic job. You got Andy Sneap filling in for Tipton. Still sounds like Priest to my ears. All right. Uriah Heep, let's be truthful here. The Uriah Heep lineup that tours today has been together for a long time. Okay? Yeah, Mick Box is the only original member, but come on. The singer, Bernie, and Mr. Lanzon on the keyboards have been in the band since 86, 87. The drummer's been around for, 15, 20 years. The bass player's been around for the last decade or close to it. So this band, this Uriah Heep band that's playing now, that records now, have been together as a unit for, 30 years. Okay? And they sound awesome. Their new albums are great. They kill on stage live, so I'm fine with that. Okay, Bernie Shaw has been the voice of Uriah Heep since the mid-'80s. He's, you can cry all you want about how, the Heap's best days were the David Byron era, but man, Byron's been, Byron, God rest his soul, okay, I love him, all right, but he's been gone a long time, and they've done a lot of great music since he left the band in the, 76 or 77, whatever year that was. So, people got to get over that. I understand you like those Byron records, but, Heap has gone on for 40 years. They've gone on and made great music and still playing great live. So, I'm very touchy when it comes to the Heap thing. Whitesnake, it's always been Coverdale's band. Whitesnake has always been a revolving door. That's just the way it is. So you just the current Whitesnake lineup is fantastic, and I've gotten used to that with Whitesnake. He's always had different guitar players and drummers and bass players and all that kind of stuff. It is what it is. Skynyrd, again, Skynyrd has been a regular touring ensemble and making occasional records since the late '80s. Johnny's a great singer. Okay, he's the voice of Skynyrd now, and unfortunately with Skynyrd, most of their members have, died, all right? They've had so many deaths in the Skynyrd family over the years, so they just kept replacing guitar players and bass players and keyboard players and drummers and keep going on and on. They still sound like Skynyrd. You've got Ricky's been in the band for a long time now. God, Ricky's been in the band for 20 some odd years, I think, as co-lead guitar player. All right, and Gary Rosington, he's the sound of Lynyrd Skynyrd. That Les Paul of his has always been the sound of the band. But you know what? They're packing it in now, and we won't be having that conversation anymore. This is their last tour. It is what it is. As far as Deep Purple is concerned, again, this lineup has been together a long time. All right, Ian Gillan, Ian Pace, and Roger Glover were classic members. Ian Pace may only be the original member. Okay. But Gillan and Glover, that's the Mark II lineup right there, most famous, right? And those two guys have been back in the band since the early since '84. Okay, Steve Morse has been in the band since 95, going on 25 years. Don Airey, been in the band now 15 years, 10, 15 years. Don Airey was a well-known name before then, so I have no issues with Deep Purple continuing on as is. All right. If Paul McCartney was able and willing to form a band called the Beatles, It'll never happen. That's an interesting question though. That kind of throws all this for a loop. But my problem with that is all these other bands we're talking about have been continual active bands. Just McCartney just coming out tomorrow and saying I'm going to form a new Beatles with my backing band. That's kind of BS, right? Because the Beatles have not been an active band for a million years. As far as Wishbone Ash, again, Andy Powell was always, in my mind, the guitar sound of Wishbone Ash. He has been fronting Wishbone Ash now for a long time. I've seen them live. They're great. They do all the classic stuff. I don't really have an issue with it. Then you got Martin Turner's Wishbone Ash, who are very good too, right? That kind of sucks when you have two factions kind of both doing that. All right, so here's where I kind of draw the line a little bit. So Nazareth for me were always about the guitar work of Manny Charlton and the vocals of Dan McCafferty. Okay, Dan to me was always the sound of Nazareth, and I could never envision Nazareth without him. And now that is the case, they're carrying on with, their guitar player has been in the band for a number of years, I don't know, 20 years or something like that. They still have the original bass player, okay? The drummer is the bass player's son. He's been in the band for a long time. The new singer, he's good. He's a good singer. He's a kind of a known guy. But he doesn't sound anything like Dan McCafferty. And the songs that they're playing, that they're recording now, to my mind, don't really sound like Nazareth. But they're going to go out and they're going to play all those classic tunes. And again, I haven't seen them with the current lineup, so I really can't judge. So that's a little sticky. All right, so you've got just the bass player. I don't know. It's hard to say. Again, I'm making arguments for certain things and some for not. But this is a debate that we could do. I could do a whole rant on this. And in fact, I kind of did. About when singers leave the band, is the band still the same? If you go check out my rant playlist. But a good question, or good questions, I should say. From Scott McGregor, hey Pete, by the time that the 90s hit, I thought that progressive rock was dead. A friend at the local music store introduced me to a magazine called Expose. I was amazed and blown away. Prog was alive and had a thriving underground of fans and festivals. Nearfest is the only one that I can remember. Did you know or have any affiliation with Expose, and has the Prog festivals pretty much died off? I actually wanted to do it for this episode. I have a box, they may be in the garage or they may be up top here, of all my old Progression and Expose magazines that I collected throughout like the 90s and the early 2000s. Expose was a really cool magazine. Kind of cheaply put together, but packed with great content. I actually thought about approaching them to write for them back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, right around the time where I got involved with Sea of Tranquility. So it was them and Progression, right? Then I just wanted to be part of it. But yeah, great stuff, great magazines. Nearfest, a great festival. I'm going to do a show all on my Nearfest experiences because that was a lot of fun. I attended the first 7 Nearfests. Back when there were progressive rock festivals all over the place, right? You had Prog Day, you had Nearfest, you had the Rozfest started, then you had Prog? What was the one on the West Coast? I forget. There was one up in New England, the Boston area. Are they kind of dead now? In this country, I think they are. But now they do the whole thing now, the festivals here anyway, are the cruises. Instead of having the festivals on land, they're doing the festivals on the cruises. That seems to be the big thing to do now. But man, that costs you a fortune. You could go to a Nearfest years ago, and it cost you like $100 for the weekend ticket, and then you'd have to bring spending money to buy CDs and shit, and you have to pay for your hotel room and gas to get there and food and all that kind of stuff. But I would go to a Nearfest and spend like $500, $600, $700 or thereabouts, whatever. But these cruises, that's going to cost you $1,500, $2,000 right off the bat. And if you got to go fly somewhere to catch the boat, that's even more. So. From NP, hi Pete, keeping on with metal, I have a question about Machine Head. It seems like they were poised to become the next big band with the Blackening. They were all over different websites and there was a lot of positive buzz about them. They seem to be just kind of crest with the Blackening, and while they've continued to be successful, they didn't become the metal juggernauts I thought they were going to be. Now they seem to be falling apart with half the band leaving. Do you have any thoughts on this, and are you even a Machine Head fan? I like a couple of their albums. The Blackening is a great album. That's by far their best album. But you got to understand, when Machine Head first burst on the scene, probably 10 years prior to the Blackening, they had a very popular first couple albums. Okay, one that was very much like a very extreme thrash album. Then they kind of started to move into like new metal territory a little bit. All right. They had a good amount of fans. There was a lot of buzz about the band. And then that kind of died off a little bit, because nu metal started to fade. The band started to rethink what they wanted to do. And they went back and put out a pure metal album called The Blackening, which is a great album and got a lot of critical acclaim. Fans loved it. All of a sudden, everybody's like, oh, Machine Head is going to be the big band once again, right? And then what do? They followed up by not doing much, right? And then everything they put out after that has not been very good. And now you got guys leaving the band, and nobody seems to know what's going on, and nobody cares. And it's a shame, because I think this is a band that had the talent, and Rob Flynn, say what you want, talented guy, but yeah, they had like 2 big albums, about a decade apart. Maybe they'll come back again, but they were ready to take on the world with The Blackening, and they let it slip right through their fingers, which is kind of sad. From Dante Falzolger, hi Pete, I have an issue with Sirius XM and want to know if you agree and what you think. I got Sirius when it came out because it played the songs you wouldn't hear on regular radio. I don't know if you noticed, but Sirius has become regular radio without the commercials. Perfect example, Ozzy's Boneyard, Classic Vinyl, etc. You hear the same hits now and then. Maiden, it's either Number of the Beast or Run to the Hills. Thin Lizzy, it's Boys or Jail. It's Boys Are Back in Town or Jailbreak, and they're doing it with all the bands. I'm thinking I'm canceling it. I'd love to hear what you think. Yeah, I canceled mine like a year ago. It sucks. All right, when I bought my new vehicle 4 years ago, my Toyota 4Runner, it came with a Sirius XM subscription. First time I ever had it. It was kind of cool. I'm still a CD guy, right? I still bring all this stuff, into the car and with me and everything like that. But I was like, it's cool for when I have people in the car. I can put a channel on, please everybody, what have you. But then I started to notice like that the channels that I liked, like Deep Tracks and Ozzy's Boneyard and a couple others, some of the jazz ones and what have you, they all play the same shit over and over and over again. It's the same songs. And it's gotten worse. And I was like, I got to the point where I was paying them like, whatever I was paying them, $10 a month to not listen to it. And I'm like, I don't need this anymore. So I went to call them up and cancel it. And they're like, oh, but we'll give you a cheaper subscription. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to pay you guys for something I don't listen to. Okay? Cancel it, please. And they still send me letters all the time, want me back. I'm like, why? I have all the music I need right here. Okay? Bring it with me wherever. So you don't need it. It's a ripoff. All right, from Caspar Baylock. Hi, Pete. I have a question regarding what Mr. Coverdale calls scraping the barrel. He was referring to the Deep Purple Bolan rehearsal tapes being released. Where do you draw the line in cases like this? The Deep Purple Appreciation Society released quite a few collector's items, all great releases, but we also have Jimi Hendrix. So many albums of lower than low fidelity actually hides the real artist and his official output, making people even wonder if that's what all the noise is about. Any thoughts? Well, these reissues like that, live stuff and all that, that's for the fans, okay? The Deep Purple stuff the Deep Purple Appreciation Society have released a lot of great live concerts over the years. Everyone I have is fantastic. I'm happy and thankful for it. Okay, the one that Coverdale was talking about, the Bolan rehearsal tapes, yeah, that's hit or miss. But all the other stuff of all, like, the live shows from all the different Mark eras, fantastic. Great to have them. I have liked a lot of the Jimi Hendrix stuff. Because, come on. Hendrix, when he was alive, had very few albums that he released. He was working on all this other stuff. So a lot of it is really decent quality. Yeah, there's some shitty stuff here and there. But come on. For the real big Hendrix fans, we've gotten a lot of great content over the years. But you got to understand, though all those Hendrix reissues that have come out over the past decades, and a whole bunch in the most recent years, those are not geared towards the casual fans at all. Those are for us, who are big into those artists. So, you can say what you want about, the quality of some of it or whatever, but I'm happy to have it. Because, if it's a band that I'm really big on, I want almost everything. From Peter Brickley, which albums in your life either shocked you or scared you or your friends to death when you first heard them? They were, and I was very into these, but they were kind of freaked me out a little bit because they were so evil. Slayer, Hell Awaits, okay, Venom, At War with Satan, and Merciful Fate, Don't Break the Oath. And I got all right around the same time. I was just starting to get into kind of extreme music back then, and all three of those albums I loved, but they scared the shit out of me. And I remember I specifically was like, I don't think I want my parents hearing that I'm listening to this. All this satanic music coming from downstairs in the house, right? From John Velatos. Pete, I read a comment while discovering new music on YouTube that resonated with me. I keep discovering bands I never heard before, read about music, listen to it, and buy it. But with the internet and so many music sources, is it just too much? How do you keep up? You can't. You can't. If you ever think that you are going to be on top of everything that's coming out, you're kidding yourself. Okay? For a bunch of years, I really thought, I used to pride myself in being like, I listened to and reviewed 400 albums this year. And I was doing that up until like a year or so ago. All right, maybe 2 years ago. I just got to the point where it was like oversaturation, and a lot of these bands were just starting to sound the same to me. Specifically, a lot of the extreme metal stuff. I was just like, God, all these black metal bands sound the same. All these death metal bands sound exactly the same. I got all this metalcore stuff and all these power metal bands starting to sound the same. And I just was like, I need to step back and say, you know what? I can't listen to and review everything anymore. And as far as like what you can buy now, it's like, I try to buy stuff that I know I'm going to want to listen to over and over and over again. That's why I also used to keep like all the stuff that was sent in to me for review on physical CDs. I used to keep everything. And now I'm like, why am I keep this stuff? It's just going to take up room in my closet on my shelf. And so I give a lot of stuff away. It is what it is. It's like, it's great to have it and review it. But if I don't absolutely love it, if I know I'm not going to keep listening to it, I don't need to hold on to it. So I buy enough stuff that I really like as it is, right? So yeah, it's tough to keep up. And our last question from David Mitchell. Hey, Pete. So one evening a few weeks ago while I was sitting in the man cave with my wife, why is my wife hanging out with me in the man cave? Anyway, the first thing she says to me is, so, when you die, what do you want me to do with all your CDs and musical equipment? Usually I don't pay attention to her, but I heard the words die, CDs, and musical equipment. I said, what? She said again, when you die, what do you want me to do with all your CDs and musical equipment? I said, do you know something that I don't? Maybe she took out $1 million insurance policy on me or something. Anyway, I've never thought about what I'm going to do with all my stuff. Upon seeing all the stuff behind you, you seem to be in the same position as me. Have you ever given any thought, God forbid anything happened to you, where would you like all your stuff to be donated to or will to? Yeah, that's actually come up quite a lot here, Dave. It's a popular topic in this house. So, without getting into specifics, right? I have told my wife and the kids. I said, listen. I said, when I die, do what you want with all this music. I don't know if it's going to be worth anything because I don't know if CDs are going to be worth anything. But don't just throw them out. Definitely, donate, and I'm going to give them places to donate them to or whatever. I said, but what I want you to make sure you don't just junk. I said, these guitars behind me and my amps and stuff like that, because the guitars especially, probably worth a little bit of money, but more importantly, comic books, all right? Those are worth a good amount of money. So I said, when I'm gone, you want to make some cash, you got some stuff here that'll bring in some money. So, but I'm going to put it all in, put it all down about who gets what goes where, how you should get rid of this stuff, all that kind of stuff. Because I know my wife won't want to keep any of it. Okay, that's for sure if I go first. But and I don't know if the kids would be interested in any of this stuff. So, but whatever. Yeah, it's a great question for people who collect stuff. What are you going to do with it all when you're gone, right? So anyway, that's it for today, guys. We got a two-parter, kind of long today. That we actually had some good questions, and I'm sorry we got interrupted. And in fact, even now my dog is outside and she's howling up a storm wanting to come in. So I got to go. So visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Here on the mighty YouTube as often as possible. So we'll see you next time. Take care.